We're going to go to Joe in Baltimore, Maryland. Joe, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well. Joe, how can we help you today?
Hey. Well, first I want to say thank you for all the work that you all are doing over there for helping folks. My particular issue is, so I've been married for 5 months now, and my wife will not consummate the marriage with me. And we did the whole premarital counseling thing with our pastor and everything. But she seems to be crippled by fear. And so I've taken her to a counselor, and she's, going to the counselor, and hopefully that goes well. But there doesn't really seem to be any progress on the front that I can see, and I'm just honestly growing increasingly desperate. I know I didn't get married for sex, and that'd be just stupid. It's more of a meaningful relational partnership, but I know God planned for sex to be part of like an emotional intimacy that can only be experienced with your spouse, and I just feel like I'm missing out on that level of intimacy with my wife, and I'm just not really sure how much longer I can last. To be quite honest, it feels like we're roommates at this point because we're just living together. Nothing really makes us husband and wife other than like the rings we wear on our fingers. So I'm just. If you have any advice, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Becky,
well, Joe, yeah. I want to know what has she told you. We're going to go to a break, but I just want to know what she has told you, the reason for this not happening.
She just says she's afraid, and we've only actually had to try once. She only made time to try the act once. She just says she's afraid. The one time we tried, she started crying in fear. Yeah. And she has no past sexual trauma or anything like that. She's never been sexually active before this. Like we're both virgins.
But you know what though, Joe? She may have had some trauma that she doesn't realize, and that may be something that's coming up at that point. I don't know, but there's a lot of fear that she's dealing with, even with seeking help. It's really a challenge. I want to encourage you. We're going to take the break and come back, but don't give up quite yet, because I think that there is hope.
Welcome back to New Life Live, and we're talking with Joe right now. Joe's in a tough spot. Tough situation that you've been married for 5 months, and that you haven't been able to consummate your marriage, and that physical intimacy is really missing there. And Joe, that is a painful thing. Becky asked, what do you know about her? So, hey, we can't find any sexual trauma, but I'm just curious, what message did your wife grow up with around sex?
Well, her dad's actually a pastor, so she grew up very conservative, that whole save it till marriage type deal. So nothing like too out of the ordinary. It's just someone who'd grown up in the church, nothing crazy.
Yeah. And what message did you grow up with?
Same thing. I grew up in the church that it was meant to be saved for marriage and to be enjoyed in marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so what happens, Joe, is we 24 hours later we're married, and it's supposed to be the greatest thing in the world, and yet we have all of these messages in our head that we have to overcome. Now, I am all for saving it for marriage because there's so much difficulty that comes with premarital sex that we hear about all the time. But this isn't a hopeless situation, Joe. I just think that you both have to have new messaging about what this means. And my suggestion would be not to send her to counseling, but have the two of you go to counseling and to talk about how can we connect on an intimate level. Not the first part isn't physical. It's literally how do we connect intimately, emotionally, spiritually, so that we can turn down the anxiety level, so that it is going to be a mutual expression of your love together.
And Joe?
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And I've actually been to a couple of the sessions with her about that, and so we're working on that. I guess my issue more or less is, I am attracted to my wife, and I do sleep in the same bed as her, and it's just, I'm not really sure how to sublimate those desires right now, because, I I do have those desires for my wife. She's beautiful and I love her. And it just, I'm not really sure, is there a way? 'Cause I know this will take time, and I'm for the process. I'm not going to leave her or anything like that. I don't know really what to do in the meantime, so to speak, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Joe, you do need a regular outlet for your frustration and your anger at the injustice of your situation. Here you have been faithful up to and through marriage, and yet you're not receiving the benefits of married life as you were promised that you would. So you have legitimate reason to be angry and physically frustrated. And it's important that you're talking about that regularly with other men who can receive it, who can be understanding, and who can be companions for you on this journey, because it's going to take longer than you or your wife want it to. Now, on your wife's side, I want to talk about emotions in general, because on the surface, they often seem illogical. How could this be scary? You're in love with each other. Come on, what's the big deal? But emotions always make sense if we dig deep enough. And I imagine that her fear expands beyond just sexual intimacy, that she may have experienced a higher level of fear and anxiety, even grown up in a good Christian family, and perhaps has not known how to handle and manage her fear. And so you're seeing a big presentation of fear that doesn't seem to make sense given the circumstances. But what she'll need to do with her counselor and with you in safe conversation is explore the roots of the fear. And I want to make sure that you get a copy of How We Love, because the comfort circle leads us to that emotional intimacy that Becky and Chris have been talking about, and it does it in a safe way while helping you to manage your understandable frustration and anger.
Well, and I was thinking along that same line, Alice, that they would be great candidates to go to our intimacy and marriage workshop, because there is a process, Joe, that you're going to have to go through in order to connect with each other, and, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And How We Love goes through those things that prevent us from really being intimate with our spouses. And I think it could be very helpful for both of you. And I don't know if that gives you hope, or if you still think, I want a different answer.
I want to bring up one other point, and your counselor will probably address this or has already, that there can be physical pain involved in sexual activity for women especially, and there can be related medical problems that can make it practically impossible to actually complete intercourse. And so making sure to have a full physical for that very reason can help at least eliminate some diagnoses.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And I think that, Becky and I were talking, or the three of us were talking about actually about this, and that is when we get the message about what sex is not, sort of a prohibition message before marriage, oftentimes what's absent, critically absent from it, is what it actually is. It is two people learning about themselves and each other and their bodies and pleasure over the course of an entire life, because our bodies and our lives and their circumstances change. And so physical intimacy can be so much more than just what we picture as sex, and it's important that we have the freedom and the safety to be able to explore that in our marriages. And so
and it's not what Hollywood has put out there as well. Absolutely.
So Joe, thank you so much for calling in. We are going to send you a copy of How We Love, and again, we highly, highly encourage anyone out there struggling in their marriage in any way. Intimacy and Marriage, July 22nd through the 24th. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. My wife and I have benefited greatly from this. We know you can too. And we will be right back right after this. Welcome back to New Life Live. Again, we were just talking with Joe. And again, this is a very important discussion. There is a lot of messaging that we get in the world today around marriage, around relationships, but specifically around sex. And a lot of competing views. But we come back to what is healthy and what it is and what it's not. And so I think that when there are periods of time, especially in marriages, that we need to abstain from what we traditionally refer to as intercourse. That could be for health reasons. It could be a lot of different reasons. So what as men do we do with that? And I think that we kind of think that like, well, there's only one option. No, there's a bunch of options. And Alice, you had mentioned, connecting with other guys, talking about the frustration, talking about the disappointment. But the other aspect of that is, sex is tied to pleasure. There's other ways of pleasure. And this is why we have to manage our stress levels in our life. And one of the ways that we can best manage our stress is to develop good recreation. If you're a golfer, get on the golf course, for goodness sakes. If you're a hiker, get out in nature. Whatever, if you don't have something, discover something. Because all of that helps manage our well-being in really significant ways.
I think few leaders in the Christian community talk about sexless marriages, which are actually fairly common, and creative approaches to sexuality within marriage.
That's really important, Alice. Yes.
A lot of us learn that it's not supposed to be fun. We can't get creative in how we approach each other sexually within a marriage. And we have to open up those conversations, which Mylon and Kate do beautifully in the Intimacy and Marriage Weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And Becky, you were mentioning that as well. It's like some of the messaging that we get, but some of the messaging we don't get.
Marriage is so complex, and sexual, and our sex lives are so complex, and it's just like what Mylon says all the time. Marriage is a collision of history, and so you've got everything from victimization to whatever the messaging was, to experiences. We talk about this all the time with every man's battle, and then also what people have seen in their own parents or in the structure of their community. So here's the thing. If you're married and you're struggling in your sex life, there is help, but you have to ask for it, and you're not the only one that's suffering with it. And I think that's the big headline there, because I think so many times it feels like I am doing something wrong and I can't ask anybody. We're the only ones, and I just want to encourage you, if this is a struggle for you, it's, sex is a good barometer for marriage. If it's not happening, do you have a reason why it's not happening? If there is a complication in it, whether it's betrayal or whether it's trauma, what are you doing to work to heal that connection with your spouse? It's very important.
Yeah.
I want to call us wives up on this as well, because we can very easily allow our lives to be consumed with children, with excuses, with resentment because of our physical discomfort, all of which are legitimate barriers to a healthy sexual marriage. But we can't allow that to be the excuse to avoid. And it can be intimidating if there's been a period without sex in a marriage. It can be very intimidating to try again to re-engage at that level with our spouse. But we women also need to understand the sexuality of our husbands and the needs that they have and the difficulty if we do live in a sexless marriage. We have an obligation as wives, especially as we have decent, kind, healthy husbands, to figure this problem out together with them and not just to avoid it, which is a temptation of ours, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that could be a temptation with men as well. And that's why things like Every Man's Battle exists. And recovery is necessary, because we can become avoidant and go to other things like pornography, masturbation, affairs, whatever, any other form of sexual acting out, as again, just avoidant of the real tough work and important work of connecting with our wives and connecting at that deeper level that is so important, and understanding our wives, because again, this is part of the messaging. If for a man, sex exists so that I can have pleasure, right? Then I don't need another person. But this is why it's important that we recover the meaning of it, is so that we can enjoy deep closeness with another person. That obviously includes an emotional closeness, a spiritual closeness, and a physical closeness. And to your point, Alice, that in that physical closeness, there's many options that we can explore, because each of our bodies they have similarities, but they also have uniquenesses to them as well. And as you're saying, Becky, the histories collide. It's important to know that how our bodies show up in relationship is really important, and there needs to be an awareness, a responsibility, and then a growth process through that. And that's why I say it's two people getting to know themselves and each other over the course of an entire lifetime.
Yes.